Are you ready to be part of the show? Are you ready now? We have viewers waiting for us. Okay, hit it when you're ready.
Y'all doing?
How you all doing today? How's everybody? Thank you all for coming back to the show. This is a fresh breath of Nick and John, episode 3.
Yay!
Thank you. Today's guest is going to be Dave Wielden. He's going to be a man from Kentucky, the first in our new format of a fresh breath of Nick and John. So we're starting it off in Kentucky. John, tell us a bit about Dave before he shows up.
I know Dave, dropped out of high school. He went into the military, traveled abroad a little bit, and then came back. I know, he went to college when he came back. English is what he majored in. And then he worked a couple jobs. He was a traveling historian, and then I know he does some political stuff now.
He'll be interesting to talk to. He's a lot of cool shit to say.
Yes, he does.
So along with the new FBNJ format, we're going to randomize our topic today before our guest shows up. He does not know what the topic's going to be. So I'll go to our spectacular bingo wheel here. And our number is N42. We're going to go to our list. We got, what is today's topic? It's going to be time periods. I should probably make this prettier for the viewers. Time periods. We should start plugging our OnlyFans account. We'll put it in the description below. We're going to start posting all photos of our feet and our guests' feet and anything else you guys want to see. Let us know in the comments what you want to see on our OnlyFans.
By request, for request, we request. I don't fucking care.
I don't know how it works. Just let us know. We'll put our account in the description.
Well, let's bring in our guest.
All right. So, Dave, thanks for coming. Welcome to the show. So let's see, where do we want to start? You want to just give us a brief background? We kind of hyped you up in the intro we made a little earlier. So tell us about yourself, just a little bit.
Well, I'm Kentucky born and raised. I was born down in the mountains of eastern Kentucky, but I ended up living from about the 7th grade on up in Louisville, which is our biggest city.
Okay.
Kind of dropped out of high school, had some issues with some drinking and other assorted substances, and went in the military.
Sure.
Spent 3 years in the military, did most of my time in Germany. This was in the late 70s, so it was the Cold War.
Awesome.
And then came back, spent some time, about a year floundering around, then went to college in Lexington at the University of Kentucky.
Okay.
Dropped out of that, spent some time floundering around Lexington, indulging myself quite a bit. And then I went back to college here in Frankfort, Kentucky, where I live now. Finished college here, kind of cleaned up my act, and been living here ever since. I've had a variety of jobs. Right out of college, I worked for the Kentucky Historical Society in a traveling exhibit program.
Cool.
Then I went into the trucking industry for a while, drove a semi over the road for about 9 years.
Awesome.
And then I spent about 4 years taking care of my father.
Sure.
When he fell ill. And then since then, I've had several different jobs. Mostly I've been working as a political consultant.
Awesome.
Doing fundraising and various campaign work.
Cool. Sounds like you have a lot of background in politics, history. You know a lot about what's going on in the world, which is perfect. Because as we discussed last time when we first met, we were trying a new format where we were going to kind of pick a topic out of a bingo wheel, and me and John did it in the intro. And lucky enough, we pulled N42, which on our list is what's the words, John? What was the word?
Drum roll, please.
Is time periods. Time periods, which is kind of perfect. We thought it was just coincidental. So I guess I'll start us off because it's interesting. You said you were stationed in Germany during the Cold War.
Correct.
So, as someone who was in active military during the Cold War, when you compare it to today's climate with Trump, Russia hysteria, the upcoming election, like, do you see a lot of similarities in the things you saw back then versus now?
No.
Really?
No, not at all. It's a completely different climate.
Interesting.
The relationship with Russia today is quite different than it was back then.
How so?
Well, there was no real dialogue.
Okay.
I mean, no dialogue like we have today.
Yeah.
There was very few meetings with the Russian leaders, and the Soviets were a very closed society.
Okay.
And they although I will say that I got a chance when I was in the military to go to East Berlin.
Okay.
We did a training thing, and that was very odd and cold place. I mean, just comparing it to West Berlin was just like night and day.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really very interesting. But I don't see a lot of similarity. No.
So on the American side of things, like when, everyone in America at the time was afraid of Russia, hating Russians, that type of thing. And then today, with everyone fearing the whole them hacking the election, them supposedly dealing with the last election, you don't think those kind of line up on the American side of things between the two periods? Does that make sense? Did I word that poorly?
Yeah, no, I don't, because back then the fear was more of nuclear war.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we weren't worried about them affecting our politics at all.
Sure.
We were more concerned with the idea of possibly going to war with them, and it being escalating into nuclear war at the time. Whereas now it's like this. It's a different world. I mean, it's the cyber side of things is changed everything.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
You think it's like less malicious in like the intent of like what they're trying to portray them doing, or is it just a different time that like now we have all this stuff and we can see it all?
Well, obviously, we have better communication, and everything is more open. It's hard to hide stuff today. It was easy to hide things back in those days compared to what we have today. And so I think the comparison, I can see how you could draw that.
Maybe it would be like more fear of the unknown. Just because like maybe they weren't going to launch nukes at us, and it did come to that point at one time, but
when I was
we didn't
child,
know that.
Yeah, in the early '60s, that was the whole Cuban Missile Crisis thing was huge.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember even my parents were terrified.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine. So, as someone me and John had to look up the list of presidents, but as someone who has kind of survived or been through, a number of different presidencies, a lot of young people today, they see Trump as like the worst possible thing that has ever happened to America, the worst thing that has ever been in office. Because of his, regardless of where you stand on the matter, a lot of young people, that's because they haven't seen or experienced a lot of other potentially poor presidents. With the way many people see Trump, has there ever been a president worse in your time?
No.
Really? Oh, so you see him as someone who's really messing up the game.
Yeah, I mean, Nixon may have been the worst I saw during my lifetime, and even the reason he got caught and got in trouble is he was trying to hide what he was doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Trump doesn't try to hide anything. He says, "I'm doing this," which is really weird.
That's. I mean, it's surprising and it's not surprising just because of, like you said, everything's out there. So whether it's a good decision he's made or a bad decision he's made, and regardless of what you think about any of his decisions, everyone knows exactly what he does all the time for the most part.
Yeah.
And
he announces it.
He announces
it. Puts it out there.
It's interesting that I guess he is the worst to a lot of people, and there actually hasn't been anybody in recent history that has been as, what's the word, detrimental as he has been.
You think that would have played the same for other presidents?
That's a good question.
Say that again.
You think that would, like, if we had past presidents acting the same way as Trump does right now, do you think that would have played out the same way for them as it does for him?
No, it wouldn't have. This is a really strange time.
Mm-hmm.
We live in very strange times. Okay, that you can't deny that. We have the strangest presidency I've ever seen, and I'm not just talking about in my own lifetime. I've done a lot of studying history, and I don't think I've ever seen anything like this.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's really odd and strange, and I don't know. I can't compare it to any other presidency I can think of.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's all just, it must be surreal for so many people who have seen their fair share of different presidents, because like you said, like now you don't have to wonder what the president is thinking. Like, we know what he's, in essence, we know what he's thinking or what he's planning. And it must be so strange for so many people. I mean, for a lot of young people, it's whatever, because even who was it? We got Obama, who I'm sure was, at least, I mean, the internet existed through Obama. Yeah. He wasn't as open about things, but like we heard from him. How frequently did
Twitter,
right
everything?
But like back a few more presidencies, how often did people really hear from presidents? Like hear their thoughts, hear what they're planning or thinking? Like how frequently did that come about?
Not as frequently as with this president, obviously.
Right.
I mean, it was in the news. The news cycle is totally different today.
Sure.
I mean, you've got to realize that the news cycle is completely different. When I was like in my teens, there were 3 networks.
Right.
Sometimes 4. Okay.
What's a network?
There was very little cable.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And cable news didn't exist. There was no 24-hour news cycle.
Sure.
And now it's like they reach for news. I mean, if they can't find it, they reach for it.
Yeah.
They got to fill the docket all the time. I mean, it's created. I mean, there's things that come out in the news now that would have never made the news before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I mean, it's just so this 24-hour news cycle kind of is its own monster in a way.
Yeah.
It feels a lot more repetitive. Being someone of a younger demographic, I would imagine things that come out in the news, like even on my phone, I'll get push notifications from like 3 or 4 different sources, and it's all very repetitive stories. So you're right, everyone's just kind of trying to pump out the next thing, especially when it comes to.
There's a rush to get the things out too. I think that everybody wants to be the first one to get it out, and so I think and we've seen this time and time again in this modern news cycle, where they'll push something out without fully fact checking it.
Yeah.
And then it comes out from later news sources that wasn't quite correct and blah 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 blah.
And they update and they edit.
And it used to be that things would, before they put something out, they would check it.
Yeah, right.
Because they had the time. There wasn't a rush to get it out.
Sure. It's common now. I'll see, like, I'll get a big notification on my phone, like, I don't know, president announces something, whatever during press conference. And they're literally typing it as the press conference is going on. Talking. So it'll just be a headline and maybe a quote, and it'll say more to come. And then literally you can like refresh your page 2 minutes later, and there's a little bit more and a little bit more. And then later, like a couple hours down the road, it'll be like, here's the full story, any updates. So yeah, it is wild. You never actually, when it's in the heat of the moment, you never actually know what's going on and what's true, what might not be true.
And the good thing is that we get news quicker.
Right.
The bad thing is sometimes it's not always as accurate as it could be.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Excuse me, I have something in my throat. When was the craziest time pre-Trump? What was like just something really out there? When you think of just, like you said, Trump was the most outrageous person you've ever experienced in office. Who's a close second? Like, what was a happenstance where you're like, wow, that's handled really interestingly, or something along those lines?
Presidentially wise?
Yeah.
I wasn't thrilled with George W. Bush and his reaction to the 9/11, especially with his movement against Iraq.
Okay.
That was obviously history shows us that it was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
There were no weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
There was nothing there. I mean, and it seems like in hindsight that was always their intent. That was always their hope.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, in the sense that it wasn't as chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
In the same sense it is with Trump. I mean, with Trump, you never know what's going to come out. He's going to tweet next, or he's going to say next. I mean,
right.
He's just all over the place. But with those guys, it seemed like they had a plan. They had an agenda. Mm-hmm. That the 9/11 attacks kind of gave them license to follow through on.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Where were you when it happened? 9/11.
I was on the Jersey Turnpike.
You were where?
Oh, really?
On the Jersey Turnpike.
On the Jersey Turnpike.
Yeah.
So did you
see
it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I saw it. I got up that morning. I was driving driving semi-truck at the time.
Okay. Right.
And I spent the night at my loading dock in North Brunswick, New Jersey.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I got up the morning. I got my load what I needed to pick up there, and then my next stop was Hackensack, New Jersey, and then I was going to Manhattan, and then out to Long Island.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I was listening to Don Imus on the radio.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I was driving north, and they were talking about this plane that had hit the one of the towers.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, they did not realize it was an airliner. They didn't know what had happened. A lot of the news media hadn't figured it out yet. They just knew a plane had hit the building.
Interesting.
And
okay.
There was speculation that it was just maybe a small plane. They didn't know.
Sure.
And as I got closer to Manhattan, I was probably about 4.5, 5 miles away from Ground Zero on the Turnpike. And I could see Manhattan clearly, the lower island there. And traffic had backed up. And it wasn't because of the plane. It was because there was if I remember right, there was an accident in the Lincoln Tunnel.
Okay.
And up there, any of the arteries in and out of the city get an accident, it's just an automatic backup.
Yeah.
And the traffic and we were just creeping along. And so I saw a plane out over the bay.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was unusual to see a plane out there. I drive New York all the time, and so I know the airline routes. You've got the Newark Airport, and you've got LaGuardia, and you've got JFK, and they come in certain paths. And this was not a place where a plane should be normally. But then I thought, there's been an accident.
Mm-hmm.
It hit this tower, and I saw it coming in over the bay, and it just came right in and hit the building.
Wow.
And it was really kind of odd because I just gotten a cell phone from my employer.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was 2001. We had them for about maybe a year, and I was on a headset, and I just called my next stop. I was calling them in Hackensack to tell them that I was going to be late.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really odd because when the plane hit, she picked up on the other end of the line, and she said hello, and I said, a plane just hit the building. I just announced it, it's just like, it just happened. And she was like, we know that. I said, no, another plane.
Wow.
We're under attack.
Yeah.
It was really clear then we were.
Right.
Yeah.
And she said, calm down, you're driving. And I said, you're right.
Jeez. How long were you stuck in traffic that day?
I wasn't stuck in traffic long because I realized a couple of things right away. I knew that they were going to shut down the bridges, so I wasn't going to Manhattan.
Sure.
Yeah.
I knew they were going to shut everything down. There was no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So I made and I saw people pulling over the side of the road, and I thought that's not a good idea either, because you're going to be stuck out here on the highway.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going straight to Hackensack. I know that location. I'm very familiar with it.
Wow.
I can ride this out there, whatever I need to do. And that's what I did. I go straight there and parked and spent the day there.
Must have been crazy, huh?
Yeah, I mean, of course, my family knew I drove New York.
Yep.
And I couldn't get through to them. I couldn't get through to dispatch. I couldn't get through to anybody because all the phones were just not working.
Right.
Didn't they shut it all down?
Well, part of it was
the radio.
Yeah, they did shut it all down, and part of it was the system was overwhelmed too with all the calls that were getting through. Everything was kind of you just couldn't get through to anybody.
Yeah. It's times like that when I say to myself, I wish the president tweeted more. You know, that would be the ideal time to get a tweet from the old president.
Well, if I remember correctly, Twitter didn't exist then.
Yeah, I don't think Twitter existed yet. I think Google was still pretty new at that point.
Facebook wasn't even out yet.
No, Facebook's 04. Twitter, I don't know. Google, I think was 97.
YouTube.
I could be wrong. Everything that was all still pretty new. So no, I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
Man, that's what was circling back around to your time in Germany. What was that like being over? How long were you over there? I forget if you told us. 2.5 years. What was that like? Was you like consistent? Like you don't leave for 2.5 years? Did you take time? Did you come back?
I came back once on leave. I took a leave and came back to the States for about 30 days.
Okay.
One time vacation.
What, being that close to the enemy at that time, being stationed over there, like what was it like? What was your day-to-day? How tense was it? What type of missions and things were you on or doing? What kind of services?
We did some border patrol. We didn't do a lot of that. We did a little bit of border patrol. Every unit took a little turn at that.
Okay.
We guarded some sensitive areas occasionally. Mm-hmm. We did a lot of training exercises, pretending to go to war,
Yeah.
We did, they called them reforgers back then, where they would have like all the units in Germany, Germans, English, everybody playing war games all over the countryside.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And, there were events like that. There were a few scares. We had a few alerts. There was some terrorism back then. There was a German terrorist group. I'm trying to remember the name of them. The Red something. The Red that was known for some terrorist activities.
Okay.
Red Army or something. I can't remember now. It's been so long.
And what were they about? Like who were they against or for? Or what was their deal?
That's a good question. It's been 40-something years.
No worries.
I remember there were some terrorist cells like that. They weren't connected to the Islam.
Okay.
What were they doing?
Blowing up things.
Okay.
I mean, are they like
car bombs, small car bombs and stuff?
Interesting. So they were just there, like causing obviously amounts of trouble. Yeah.
There was hijackings were a thing back then too. Hijackings, airline hijackings were a big thing back in those days, in the 70s.
Back when it was easy to get on a plane.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't trying to fly them into buildings or anything. They were just trying to hold people hostages.
Sure.
Get money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
attention.
Wild. So when you came back to the States and you started working in your traveling exhibit, is there like were there anything, like what types of things did you teach at that point? Were you teaching things that were like really, really old, or were you teaching about the war that would just happened, or like what were your exhibits? Explain that to me.
We worked for the Kentucky Historical Society, so
right.
we worked with Kentucky history.
Mm-hmm.
And first exhibit I worked on was an agriculture exhibit. I inherited it.
Okay.
That exhibit. The second exhibit I worked on was it was the bicentennial. It was 1992, the bicentennial of Kentucky. So we created a bicentennial exhibit featuring the second 100 years of Kentucky history. So we focused on 1892 to 1992.
Okay.
After that, I did an exhibit on the Civil War in Kentucky.
Sure.
Okay.
That's interesting, actually. How was that?
Actually, wait a minute. The exhibit after that was not the Civil War. The exhibit after that was World War II.
Okay.
Because it was
Okay.
the 50-year anniversary since World War II.
Okay.
Wow.
And we did a Kentuckians in World War II kind of thing.
Sure.
And then we did the Civil War in Kentucky.
How was so you were? I'm just trying. I'm picturing it. I'm seeing. Like, is it like a bus or like a Winnebago? Like how big?
No. It was a semi truck.
Oh.
It was a trailer with an exhibit in it. It was
Okay.
a 45-foot trailer with the exhibit inside the trailer, and then I'll try to send you some photos.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. Do you?
If I can find them,
Yeah. No worries.
Where were you going? Like,
That was my question.
Just
Yeah.
in Kentucky.
Did people
Mostly to
like
schools.
book you?
Yeah.
They booked you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go to schools. We also solicited some events.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we were always at the state fair. We went to schools during the school year.
Okay.
We went to county fairs, events in towns, all over the state.
So you're a big history buff, huh?
I like to think so. Yeah.
If you could pick a time period, we'll keep it just within
100 years.
100 years. 100 years. I feel like we covered that though. If you could go back and observe a time period, what would you pick? Man, do whatever you want. Make it creative. I feel like I'd like to see the pirates. 1770s Caribbean. I want to see like pirates in the movie. I want to feel like the British rule over it. I'd like to see the political climate of the time. I think seeing the pirates and that geography, I think would be super
Somalia.
Cool. Yeah, or Somalia doesn't sound as pretty though as 1770s.
And pirates were probably not as pretty as they sounded.
Not as many Jack Sparrows on the boats and.
If I don't know. I used to think about this a lot when I was younger, and I just don't think about it as much today. I guess I have a fascination with the Old West.
Okay.
I mean, I know it wasn't what movies depict.
Right.
I've read enough to know that. It's still a fascinating time.
Go to Texas.
Yeah,
I feel like you could still live it up in Texas. Rent a horse.
Texas. And Texas is a strange place.
I've never been to Texas myself. But John, what about you? Time period?
Time periods. I know a lot of people were speculating that the last 100 years are going to repeat themselves.
How so?
So like every 10 years, something usually happens. And so 2010, 2020, 2030, 40. So every year in the 1900s, the same thing is going to happen in the 2000s.
And you can see that. I mean, we've got a pandemic going on. We had a pandemic going on nearly 100 years ago.
Yep. Yeah. Which that could be good news though. That could be good news though, because that means the 2020s were some of the best economic times, right? The country's ever faced.
Yeah, and then we had 1929.
And then 29, right? but historically, big recessions happen on I think it's like an 8-year cycle where it kind of ebbs and flows on an 8-year scale. But huge hits like that, obviously, not as frequently. We'll keep our fingers crossed that doesn't happen again.
Nothing's really happened. Like, what was the biggest one? Like 2008.
08.
That's the Great Depression, really.
The biggest one was 29.
29 was the Great Depression, and then 08 was the Great Recession with the housing crash.
In 29, a couple of things happened that made it even worse. Right after the crash of the stock market, they had the Dust Bowl hit in the Midwest, and that was really dry, and it really hurt agriculture, and that added to the problems. Yeah, in the United States.
I remember watching the most basic video in like a history class where it was it was something happened with farmers. So all the farmers rushed to the bank to try and take out all their money. All the banks crapped themselves, and then all of a sudden we were in a depression until World War II basically saved the American economy, and that's the 8th grade version.
That's a little generalized too, because there were a lot of policies that were put in place by Roosevelt during that time.
Right.
Roosevelt was the only president we've had more than 2 terms out of.
Yeah, sure,
right.
Correct.
And it was because of the Depression and his reaction to it, and he tried to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
And there, it's we could go on for days about Roosevelt, but he did institute some excellent policies that really guided the country towards getting back on its feet. But World War II was really it obviously springboarded things even further than his policies could.
Was he the Great New Deal guy? Was that Roosevelt?
Yeah.
The Great New Deal with all of the Yep. Okay, I remember that.
Social Security started under him. They had all the works programs where people were put to work working on parks and working on public works around the country.
A lot of banking laws and regulations, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there were, and they were needed.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, that's one of the reasons that the crash happened with the whole banking nonsense.
Yeah, they repealed a lot of that stuff, and that led to the 2008 problems.
Yeah. So tell us just a quick couple things about the political fundraising you do now and the people you kind of support, and just tell us a little bit about that if you can.
Well,
or what's your favorite part about it? I guess what you're trying to accomplish. Give us something good.
Well, I will tell you right now that the fundraising for politics is the most corrupt thing we've got going in this country.
Interesting.
I'm not a big fan of it.
Okay.
But I also am a realist, know that we can't change the system overnight.
Right.
And to be competitive, a politician has to raise money.
Yeah.
I mean, I know excellent candidates that couldn't get any traction at all because they couldn't raise money.
Sure.
And I know terrible candidates that have raised lots of money and made themselves very viable.
Mm-hmm.
What is that for? Is that just like to get ads?
Yeah, ads are everything. I mean, money is everything in politics. Okay, right now, you've got to get on TV.
Right.
TV, despite the internet, TV's everything.
Yeah.
Because fact is, younger people, sorry guys, don't vote as much as older people do. Older people tend to vote more, and older people watch TV. They're on the internet.
Right. Yeah. It's funny you said that, because we have just a couple minutes left here. Why, as someone who has lived through a whole bunch of crazy presidencies, and you kind of have a close tie with politics, you're a historian. Why should people be getting out and voting in 2 months now? 2 months? 1 month? 2 months?
2 months.
Why? Tell us.
Why?
Give us the sales pitch.
It's the only way to affect change. The way they control things is keeping people. If the fewer people vote, the better it is for the right. Mm-hmm. And I'm on the left.
Sure.
I used to be in the middle of the road, but they kind of shifted the whole thing around so that I'm without changing, I'm farther left now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a whole other story. Voting is the only way anything's going to change short of revolution.
Okay.
If you don't use the right to vote, it won't change.
Sure.
It'll push things to the point where people are going to be so frustrated they're going to take other action.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Voting is the only action we can take now that keeps within this system we have.
Yeah.
With that being said, how do you convince younger people to vote who saw Trump lose the popular vote?
Oh, you're going to get into the yeah,
the legitimacy
that's
of it.
the whole electoral college argument.
Sell somebody on that. How can in an elevator pitch? How can you?
So right now we're stuck with the Electoral College. We're not going to get. That's not going to go away before this election.
Understood.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether it needs to go away or not. Some people do, some people don't. I'm kind of on the fence on that one personally.
Yeah.
I see why they did it. I understand why it was something that was instituted, and I understand the reasons, and I think they were valid reasons. Our founders did not want this country to be run by mob rule.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they wanted to kind of weight the vote between highly populated areas against lower populated areas. That's the whole purpose of the Electoral College, is to be able to not let the New York City control what Iowa's doing.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, they wanted to balance that.
Yep.
And so that was why they created the Electoral College, which is an idea of fairness that I think is a real thing, and that's why I don't want to discard it out of hand.
Right.
Yeah.
But voting is important. Now, I would. There's an argument you made that as a Kentuckian, I know for a fact this state will vote for Trump.
Okay.
The majority of people in this state will vote for Trump. I will not vote for Trump.
Uh-huh.
But my vote won't count very much because all our delegates will vote for Trump in the Electoral College, because the majority of people will vote for Trump, and they don't weight that. It's not weighted the way they do it now. And this is where I'd like to see the change in the Electoral College, where because the majority votes for the guy in the state, they get all the delegates to the Electoral College. I don't think it ought to be that way. I think it ought to be weighted to the number of people who voted for Trump and the number of people who voted otherwise.
So then what gets you, oh, I'm sorry, John. Go ahead. Ask your question.
You'd have like percentage wise. So like what California has like
weighted. Yeah.
Okay.
So what, as somebody, so you just said, you know, you would not vote for Trump. You know, your state's going to vote for Trump. What gets you over there to vote? Like, what's your hope? What stops you from being
what gets me to vote is that it's part of being a civic duty of being a citizen of this country.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, I was raised by old school Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
My family would turn over in the grave if I didn't vote.
Got it.
I was raised that way. Now, some people haven't been raised that way, and I understand that.
Yeah.
And they don't see the value in it. And the fact of the matter is that it is a family thing, I think, the installation, the idea of voting. And so I think that a lot of people have not had that. Plus, I don't know about you guys when you were in school, but we actually had civics taught to us.
I don't think we had a civics class.
No, you didn't. I'm sure you didn't, because my kids didn't have it taught to them.
I
taught it.
Yeah.
I taught it to them, okay? And they know that I'll hound them if they don't vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Much as my parents hounded me.
Yeah.
And so it's part of being a citizen of this country.
Awesome.
And it's one of the most important things we can do.
Sure.
And if we don't, and the thing is, it's crazy because so few people vote.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
there's very little turnout.
It's crazy how few people vote in this country.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, it was like record lows last time, if I'm not mistaken. It's fewer and fewer each time, but we'll see. You know, everybody who listens, get out there and vote. Dave says so. It's important.
It's the best way to affect change without resorting to violence.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, Dave, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. And this was fun. Good talking.
Good talking to you.